way I step, something in my jeans. And FOI, you know that's the team, huh?
Peace. This is your brother Aidan X, and welcome to the processing class. Peace. This is brother Aidan X, and welcome to the processing class. Today I got a very, very special guest. I got brother Jevon X. Salam alaikum. Peace be upon you, brother.
Alaikum salam, sir.
The first question I want to ask you, I just want to get straight into it, is how did you get the teachings? Were you born in nation, being a nation baby, or did you get the teachings some other way?
I actually got the teaching some other way, not a nation baby. Actually never even heard of the nation growing up. I actually found out about the teachings through Brother Nuri Muhammad, his Breakfast Club interview. I was in the Army when I found out about the teachings as well, 2020. I was pretty much on quarantine. You know, the pandemic had hit. I had got put on quarantine 5 times, you know what I'm saying? And it was in October, I believe. This was like my 3rd or 4th quarantine, and I was scrolling on YouTube. There's nothing to do, stuck in my room. And I kept seeing this interview on my suggested by Brother Nuri. And I was like, man, let me just watch this. You know what I'm saying? And I watched it. And what stood out to me was he was already like teaching stuff that I was kind of interested in learning about. But what stood out to me the most from that interview was when he was talking about Malcolm X. Because growing up in school, we didn't learn about Malcolm X at all. Like, I promise you, if you would have asked me who Malcolm X was before being in the nation, I would have just told you, hey, he had beef with Martin Luther King. That's literally all I knew. I didn't know he was Muslim, nothing like that. So he was like, Malcolm X was killed by the FBI, not the FOI. And I'm like, who is the FOI? You know, I said, I'm in the Army. I work for the government. Like, I never heard of the FOI. So I'm like, okay, let me find out. So I ended up watching the Malcolm X movie. And then I learned about who Elijah Muhammad was and things like that. So that's just a brief, it's a lot more detailed than that, but that's just kind of brief how I actually was introduced to the teachings through Brother Nuri, his Breakfast Club interview.
Yes, sir, man. That's great. What made you not, like, you know, obviously you're registered. What made you change your mind about, like, you know, the narrative that the Nation of Islam or the FOI killed Malcolm X?
Well, honestly, that never really resonated with me, especially after like doing my research, you know, because with me being so new and being able to just, the truth had a pull on me, you know what I'm saying? So I was pretty much ignorant to the narrative that they try to put out there that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad killed Malcolm X. Like, I didn't, even watching the movie, that's not what I got from that. Even watching Who Killed Malcolm, that's still not what I got from that. So that narrative was never really so rooted in me to where I had a disdain towards the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. If anything, that's what brought me in, seeing a Black man being raised up by his teacher, put in front of the world, talking to this white man like that. So, you know, it really was never a big battle or conflict. By the time I found out, you know, that was a big issue and such an uproar amongst Black people in America, I was already in processing class, you know, so it really had no real, I had no internal conflict with that narrative. So it was pretty good for me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How was it transitioning from the Army to the FOI?
It's a transition. It's kind of hard to explain because you have that the Black man is militant by nature. You know what I'm saying? We're attracted to discipline and order and structure by nature. So even before the Army, I was already attracted to that, like, you know, being on time, having discipline, doing the right thing and things like that. The biggest transition, I would say, is the principle. You know, the principle in the nation and becoming the FOI, we're trying to become men of God. You know what I'm saying? But in the Army, you're just a soldier. You're just another number, and you're easily replaced. And God is nowhere in the forefront of your mind, honestly, when being in the Army. You're just going to work, doing what you do, and ultimately, you're preparing yourself to go to war for a nation that doesn't care for you. You know what I'm saying? So the transition as far as the structure, the discipline, The order and things like that wasn't a transition, but that principle was the biggest change, trying to, shift the focus. What am I actually striving to do? Finding out your purpose. You know what I'm saying? So I say that's the biggest transition, is like switching the principle that's at the forefront of your mind and striving to become a man of God, not just, putting on a monkey suit every day and wasting time, honestly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And when you first heard the teachings and, and wanted to register, did you leave the Army? Did you quit the Army? How did that work?
No, sir. So when I first heard the teachings, it was October. I just got out the Army in December. So I went through all processing class, everything, wrote my letter. While in the Army, it passed. I just had to wait to be out of the Army all the way until to be like that, get that official registration date. You know what I'm saying? So I went processing class, I recited, wrote my letter, but then I got my official registration date the day that I got out of the Army, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How old are you, brother, if you don't mind me asking?
I just turned 21 April 16th this year.
Yes, sir. And some people watching this may be like, man, that's crazy. Why would I want to be in something that's so disciplined? And why would I want to live a righteous life at such a young age? So what would you say to people that have that kind of mindset, of, your youth is when you're supposed to be playing, you're supposed to be sleeping around, you're supposed to be drinking, smoking, etc. So what would you say to people that's like, man, why would I join the FOI and wear the bow tie and pray 5 times a day when I'm supposed to be young, man? I'm supposed to be going out.
If you study nature, as we're told to do, and I'll use the spider for example, the spider spins a web. And when it spins that web, that's what it uses to catch its food. So the spider isn't restricted to that web. It's free to go out and do whatever it wants to do. But the spider knows by nature that in order to be successful and sustain its life, it has to stay in that web to eat. We've been given a restrictive law of Islam. Though it does restrict you, like the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said in his WVON interview with the Executive Council about 2 weeks ago, though it does restrict you, it's restricting you from that which kills you. And if we want to live as long as we can, because it's human nature to preserve yourself, we've been given a law by God himself to operate within that law, which ultimately leads to our success because you're operating in its nature, in your nature. You know what I'm saying? So that's the purpose of us striving to adhere to certain laws and disciplines. And it's an uphill battle. You know what I'm saying? Everything worth value has a difficulty factor attached to it. And the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said in his the Sacred Fast of Ramadan for the Strengthening of the Will lecture, he said, sometimes the difficulty can be so great that it puts out the light of our own desires. So a lot of people may see the lifestyle that we live, but they think that these restrictive laws that we have to adhere to are so great that it puts out that desire, because you feel like you can't give up the women. You feel like you can't put down the body. You can't put down the weed. But ultimately, look at the bigger picture. By nature, nobody has to tell you that what you're doing when you're smoking, you're drinking, all of these things lead to death. They deteriorate your body. But we're in so much pain that we seek pleasure. But if you come out of that, which gives you temporary pleasure and not even true peace, because that's what we're striving to achieve in life is peace, you have to adhere to a restrictive law that every creature or being in nature has to adhere to be successful. So that's what I will say is the law only restricts you from that which kills you, and it's only right that you submit to that which gives you life.
Yes, sir. Man, teach. But what would you say to people that's like, man, I understand the teachings. I get what it talks about when it's talking about Black people must self-improve and all that. But why believe in God, specifically Islam? Because, you hear about Islam, and Allah and all this stuff. A lot of this stuff is not, known to the Black community, it's kind of foreign. So why believe in Allah, and what is Allah to you?
Well, if we look at all of the prophets who came before and all of the servants of God, they were all Muslims. And we're taught not to get caught up in titles, not to get caught up in language and dialect. So all a Muslim is one who submits their will to do the will of God. Allah means God. It's just an Arabic word for God. But what is God? God is force and power. And we're taught that God isn't anything spooky. I can't remember who I heard this analogy from. It might have been the minister, but it could have been somebody else, where they were talking about how when we were younger, we all had a feeling that we were going to be something big when we got older. And that's because we have God, the Spirit of God, deposited in us. But we have to go through trials, tribulation, uphill battle to bring that out of us, to make that manifest. But submitting your will, submitting your desire to do God's will and ultimately become one with him is why we need, how do I say this? This is why we need a structure to follow to make that happen. You know what I'm saying? To bring about that evolution. I heard somebody say that, you know, Black people always want to talk about this nationalism and things like that. And they want to lead Black people without God. And I heard the response to that was, you a fool if you think you can lead Black people without God. We're the most spiritual people. We're the most religious people, but we have a concept that's spooky, hence to why we're still in the condition that we're in. So we serve a true and living God. And that's what it means to me, is it means that God, he's not something out of reach. And once our people learn that God is not out of reach, you can aspire to and grow into being God himself. You won't be the supreme being, but you'll be on such a high level of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that when you talk, it won't be you talking, it will be God talking. When you walk, it won't be God walking, it won't be you walking, it will be God walking in you. Hence to why Jesus was the Son of God, because he submitted his will entirely to do the will of his Father. So us as Black people, this is why we need God. This is why we need Islam, because all of those who came before us, who were servants, prophets, messengers, apostles, disciples, all aspire to become one with God. And if we want to get up out of our condition, if we assess the condition of the world, we see that God is on scene today. And if we don't want to be those who are caught up in his wrath and his chastisement, we have to submit to God. So hopefully I answered your question, brother.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, you did.
Praise be to
I'm on your Instagram right now. That's why I'm looking at my phone.
Yes,
and
sir.
You have this video called "What's Your Sign?" and it's a clip from I forgot how
Brother
to.
Abdullah.
Yeah, our brother Abdullah, that's his name. And it's talking about what's your sign. Can you just go into that? Like, does the Nation of Islam, the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, do we follow the horoscope? You know, because we see it in kind of the culture nowadays, man. What's your sign? You know, females often ask that. That's kind of a dating type of thing. So can you just go into that, man? You know, because is it true in your perspective? You know, of the Aries, the Gemini, the Scorpion, the compatibility, and you know, this has a meaning of your life. And you can follow it. Do you think horoscope should be a map for our lives in your perspective, and using the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Not at all. 100%, emphatically no. Astrology, as we're taught, is from the devil. It has no truth to it whatsoever. It cannot be mathematically proven. We're taught Islam is mathematics, and mathematics is Islam. I have yet to hear one person bring about the factual evidence using math and science to prove astrology. Hence, if you watch that video, Brother Abdullah said, okay, there's 12 signs in the universe, and there's billions of people in the world. And astrology didn't just get here in 2020, 2019 when it became trending. It's been here. The sun, moon, and stars have been here for trillions of years. So if this is the case, what is the difference between the slave master that's a Gemini and the slave that's a Gemini? Why is the slave out there in the field, right? But the slave master is in a big house with his butter biscuits. What's the difference? There's poor cancers, there's rich cancers. And then they talk about Mercury in retrograde. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad studied astrology in the Congressional Library of Congress because he had to see why our people were worshiping this. It is from the devil. And if you want to hear, the minister goes on about this in length. It's a lecture called Who is That Mystery God? He did in 1972, I believe. And this is even astronomy. The white man can't understand astronomy because it's an exact science that sustains civilization. All of his work in astronomy is guesswork. Hence to why his numbers are always changing. But when we look at astrology as a guideline for our lives, looking at horoscopes, yeah, it may seem true. Yeah, it may relate, but there are certain things that everybody has to go through in life, and the way you act is not determined, or your destiny isn't determined by Mercury and Venus lining up one day. If you sit on the couch your entire life, no matter if you're a Cancer, a Taurus, a Gemini, whatever, all of the 12 signs, if you sit on the couch every day of your life, you'll be nothing. But if you get up and work and, do what you need to do, you'll be successful. There's a law of cause and effect. And they use this law of cause. They don't even teach the law of cause and effect. They want you looking up at the stars and things like that. And you really can't even explain it. So followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam do not follow astrology. That's just 100% no.
Yes, sir. What would you say to those that say, man, I'm with the nation and all, man, but I believe in Jesus and I don't want to give up Jesus. And, I'm trying to get to heaven. I don't want to go to hell, for disobeying God. So what would you tell those that had that kind of mindset?
In the Nation of Islam, we don't talk Jesus. We strive to live Jesus. We strive to embody everything and carry into practice everything that Jesus taught. Jesus was the perfect example of the law of God, the living within the laws of God. Jesus was that perfect example. But you even see our brothers and sisters, they'll have Jesus tatted on their arm. They'll wear the crosses and the necklaces. They'll get all these tattoos and these symbols, but they're smoking, they're drinking, they're fornicating. Jesus said fornicators, nor homosexuals, nor women abusers are going to see the kingdom anyways. So we don't drop Jesus. We drop up the symbolism. We drop the symbolism and pick up the actual law that Jesus practiced and carried. And we see what that law can do for us through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Hence to why we say we're disciples of his. But in order to be a disciple, the base of discipline is disciple. So they're one and the same. You can't be a disciple if you're not disciplining yourself to follow that law which Jesus carried. So you're not gonna go to hell after you die if you say, oh, well, I can't join the nation, because we're taught that there's no life after death. I just make it real plain and clear. If a fire is burning for eternity, it's not that hot. And there's no person under the ground that's going to treat you worse than this white man that's treating you above the ground. The worst thing somebody can do is kill you. So if somebody kills you and you die, you can't go to hell and be killed again. And if you go to hell and there's a fire, guess what? That means there's oxygen. You can't start a fire without oxygen. But if there's oxygen, guess what? There's life. You're breathing. But you can't be breathing and have life if you're dead. So I just wanted to address that part as well, because there's no spookiness. And even in heaven, people say there's milk and honey when you go to heaven. Well, who's going to milk those cows and fight off those bees to get that milk and honey? All the debt that this white man is in, they say streets paved of gold in heaven. The white man got telescopes, satellites all over the place. He ain't found a speck of gold in space yet. And if he did, he would have went and got it by now with all this debt that he's in. You know what I'm saying? So this is a spooky teaching, but we try to embody those laws and principles that Jesus taught as members of the Nation of Islam. So when you join the nation, you're not dropping Jesus. You're dropping that false symbolism that the white man has taught us, and you're picking up that law and principle, which will ultimately lead to your success.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Some may be watching this, man, because me, I was an all left student, growing up. So what is the necessity to studying, because we think of reading, we think of all of that, listening to lectures as being very boring, to be frank. So what is it that can you just go into, why is it important to you to study, to research? And why, people may watch, man, I'm a real nigga, I ain't into that, reading and all that stuff, man. That stuff acting white. So what would you say to people, that have questions about the studying aspect and also the cleaning yourself up aspect? Because all of those things may not be considered fun.
Definitely. This first thing I want to address is a lot of people don't think about why reading was illegal in slavery. And if you really think about it, they would take your life if you open up a book. But why? Why? We have to ask why. When you think words, or when you think in words, and you put those words together and form sentences, which form thoughts and ideas. But if I can limit the capacity of words deposited in your word bank, in your head, I'm limiting your capability to create a new thought. So if I never even put the word freedom in your head, you'll never think about ways to become free. If I deprive you of a right to seek knowledge, you can never create anything that will bring about evolution or change. Hence to why we're still in the condition that we're in. We have to read, we have to study, we have to seek knowledge. People wonder, how did they build the pyramids? People wonder, how did all of these things happen? Even people who they see are successful, we're taught study the white man, for he makes no excuses for his failures, right? These white men, they tell you all the time, oh, I read this book, I read that book. They put out this year's my annual reading list. We won't pick them up, but we want to become successful the way they become successful. We have to study because it's important. Master Fard Muhammad came to renew our creative mind and our creative thinking. But we can't do that if we don't seek knowledge. If we don't seek knowledge, then we will always be under the foot of those who do seek knowledge, get that knowledge, and act on that knowledge. So it's important that we study, because ultimately we know we're dissatisfied. We're at 100% dissatisfaction. There's something happening every single day that proves that something needs to change. But we have to be the ones who pick up that responsibility to bring about that new change. Because the people who, in mathematics, we're taught Islam is mathematics, mathematics is Islam. In mathematics, when you're presented a problem, that problem contains the solution. But you have to work out that problem and extract the solution from the problem. But if you're only seeking to look at the problem and say this problem needs to change, it's never going to change. It's the same with our condition. We have to be able to work out a solution from the problem and extract ourselves to bring about change. This is the importance of studying, seeking knowledge. How are you going to, I talk to my little cousins all the time. We need electricity, right? We need electricity. Well, when we build our own civilization, if nobody knows how to connect wires and make conduits and stuff and wrap up copper, who are we gonna be calling to turn on our lights? The white man. So as soon as you leave the problem coming right back. This is why we have to seek knowledge, because knowledge and education is the basis for civilization. How are we gonna be our own independent nation if we don't even want to pick up a book? If we don't want to learn anything new, then our condition won't change. You won't see a new world. You won't see a new day. You'll just continue to suffer until your eventual death. So that's the importance of it. And we have to clean ourselves up, addressing the last part of your question, because what's the scripture? You can't put new wine in an old wine skin. You can't get to a new civilization or the kingdom of God, but carrying your dirty or nigga ways. You brought up people who say, I'm a nigga. People don't even know what that word means. If you don't read, you're right. You are a real nigga. Here's why. Because Negro, which was what they called us first before nigga, they called us Negro. That comes from the Latin word necro, which means dead. Dead means neutral, non-existent, flat line. You're not doing anything. You're not working. That's what Negro or nigga means. So you can be a real nigga all day. That means you're still bowing down to the foot of the white man. You know, it's not cool to be a real nigga. The minister said that God didn't make a nigga, he made a man. The white man made you a nigga.
Mm.
So if the white man made you a nigga and you're bragging about that, guess what? You just bragging about being a new and innovative slave. They took the chains off your ankles and your wrists, but they put one on the most important part, which is your mind. We're taught that thought never dies. But if they're limiting the capacity of your thought, you're just a dead man, but you're walking and talking. So this is why we must study. We must seek knowledge. And not only once we seek it, Brother Ben said, it's not about how many books you read, it's about how many pages you apply. So we also must act on that knowledge. And I'll end on this part. If I'm hungry and I know how to make a sandwich, but I'm sitting on the couch because I'm too lazy to make a sandwich, guess what? I'm gonna die of starvation. I'm gonna die of starvation. I have what it takes to go fix a sandwich mentally and physically. But since I don't want to get up and do the work, guess what? I'm going to die because I didn't want to solve my own problems. So hopefully that answers your question, brother.
Man, you answered it really, really great, man. The next thing I would want to say, man, the last question, what's your advice to those who are maybe struggling with laziness, who may, like you said, that don't want to read, that may be caught up doing the wrong thing? Maybe sleeping around, and I'm not condemning, but sleeping around, drinking, smoking, call themselves a real nigga or a bad beat. What would be your advice to them, talking to them? Should they register? Should they study the teachings? Can you just go into that for the last question?
I would say, one, give yourself grace. A lot of times people look at us and think that we're perfect, which is far from the truth. We all struggle. We're in a hospital, we're sick, and we're slowly healing. But the healing process, it's a process. It's not instant. So I would advise, of course, everybody should study. Everybody should just take off all of the perceptions and things that you've heard and really just hear him out and seek the truth. Because once you find the truth, lay hold to it. And if you find it not to be true, then do away with it. But I guarantee you, that if you listen to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, if you read a book of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you can't find anything that they've said that has not come to pass. Not one thing that has not come to pass or is making itself manifest as we speak. If you're having problems, we're taught in the Holy Quran that fasting is a prescription for you to guard against evil. So if you're consistently involved or delving in something that you feel is holding you back and it has a constraint on you, just try to stay away from it for a day, 2 days. See how you feel. Think about your thoughts. And when I say think about your thoughts, see when you think a thing, just get to the root of why you're thinking that thing. Watch how your thoughts clear up once you fast, So I would advise everybody just continue to fast. And continue to study, seek that knowledge. And like I said, give yourself some grace because it is a process, but don't rush. It's all for you. It's all for your personal development. We have a study guide by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan titled Self-Improvement is the Basis for Community Development. So go into that self-analysis, that self-examination, or that self-correction, and then self-reflection. You know what I'm saying? Think about yourself first and see what you need to do and write it down. There's power in the pen. Write down what you need to work on. Write down what you need to improve and work with yourself to evolve to where you're doing away with those things that were holding you back, making you lazy, and come on home, join your nation, the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir, man. Praise be to Allah for having you, brother. I definitely hope that we can build together again in the future. And I definitely hope, man, we can come in physical contact, man, and come get our people. But I want to thank you for coming on your little brother's platform. This little small platform I'm trying to build up. And I appreciate your time and your patience. And I just want to give the greetings to you and your family. And I just want to say salam alaikum. Thank you again.
Salam. And I do want to say one thing. I really do applaud the work that you do on a consistent basis, getting out the teachings daily. A lot of times our people don't want to post or they don't want to share, but you've been consistent, bro. I literally see even though I follow you, I'll see other people post what you post before I see it from your own page. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely getting out there. My mom will send me DMs of your work sometimes. I'm like, dang, I ain't even see this post yet. It's Brother Aidan next. You know what I'm saying? So you're definitely doing a good job, bro. And I really do appreciate the work that you do in resurrecting our people, bro. So I just want to give you your flowers while I had the chance as well.
Praise be to Allah. I appreciate it, man. We striving. We're striving to get this, man. You know, we try to compete with the minister, a righteous competition.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So he ain't stopped. He hasn't been stopping for over 60 years, man. He got me.
Right.
So,
yes, sir.
So yes, praise sir. Be to Allah. But definitely, man, we're gonna build in the future, brother. Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, my brother.